class. This video will help you understand your next major assignment in the course, which is the interview with a school psychologist or counselor assignment. Everything I'm going to show you is up on the course site. As usual, you click on course material and then you'll see the assignments folder. If you go into the assignments folder, the interview with a school counselor or school psychologist folder should be the top one. So let's go ahead and click on that. And inside you'll see a number of resources for the assignment, the instructions that I'll be going through and the grading rubric, the link to submit, as well as the link for this video and the PowerPoint used to create it. Your assignment is due on March 8th and it's worth 20% of your grade. The idea here is to find a school psychologist or a school counselor. It's important that you not use a classroom teacher for this because a classroom teacher's experiences are qualitatively different than a psychologist or a counselor. You may conduct the interview by Zoom, over the phone, in person, but you should use a school psychologist or a counselor. The purpose of this interview is to explore how this professional collaborates with teachers, parents, administrators, and support students. I've given you bullets in the instructions that you should to help shape your interview. So first of all, make sure you write down what date and time you interviewed, the school name, the grade levels that the school covers, the name and title of the interview, the setting of the interview, and it's good and helpful if you ask a little bit about the background of the interviewee. Where did they go to school? What degree did they get? Once you get into the meat of the interview, you're going to talk about you're going to ask them questions about, well, how do they work with families, the nature and contact that they have with families. How do they work with specific students? So it's important here to ask them particular categories, okay? So do you work with behavior management? What kinds of learning issues do you deal with? How do you develop social skills? A big part of one of these professionals' day is working with teachers, classroom teachers. So how do they support classroom teachers? Do they have a push-in model where they go and sit in the classroom? Do they have a pull-out model? Do they offer support through some type of consultation status? Also, how they collaborate with other professionals in the school. So if you're interviewing a guidance counselor, how does he or she work with the school psychologist, with the administration, for example? What their views are on medication. Now, a lot of times what we'll get with this is they'll be strongly anti-medication or they'll be strongly pro-medication. And that's okay to write that, but recognize that's one person's views. So I often get students taking an anti-medication stance when in reality you don't really know enough yet to know that sometimes medication can be very helpful for students. It can help them focus, for example. I've seen students completely turn around when they get on an appropriate medication. As always, I caution you not to go and advocate for medication because you're not a doctor. But the appropriate stance that teachers need to take on medication is we let the medical professionals decide that. You can have your personal opinions, but don't advocate in your paper personally. You're talking about the person's opinions. Perspectives on inclusion. So inclusion means to include special education students in the regular classroom. What is their perspective on that? And views on changes based on recent legislation and technology advances. Particularly interesting would be their view about schools going rapidly online in the last year or two. And finally, a reflection and a conclusion. Now, a reflection is different than a conclusion. A reflection says what you've learned, what surprised you, what you'll take forward into the classroom. A conclusion is just like a paragraph conclusion. I interviewed this, in conclusion, I interviewed this teacher, etc. You're going to write it up as a narrative, like a case study, not as a Q&A. A minimum of 3 to 4 type pages, properly formatted in APA, and we've learned how to do that. You're not going to write questions and then answers, so write it as if it's a narrative. You can see the rubric that I'm going to use to grade your assignments. Do you fully explain the context? Do you cover the bulleted items? That's content coverage. Do you have an appropriate reflection? And you're writing in APA mechanics. That's it. Any questions? Please feel free to email me at nhowrunner@mercy.edu. Everybody have a great week.